Um, Thank you, everyone. My name is Scott Antel. I'm a legal partner, hotel lawyer with Bryan, Leighton, Paisner. I have information. You lawyers are not rock stars, despite what maybe these guys are. Today, our panel is about reimagining the hotel of the future. But before we do that, we have to build the hotel, which often is a difficulty. We have a panel here of developers, project managers, architects who can describe that process and where that process is headed in future. I'm going to allow the panel to briefly introduce themselves before we ask questions, so starting with you, Andre.
Okay. So my name is C.Meyerhans. I'm the principal and partner of Fischer-Meyerhans Architects. We have offices in Dubai and in Hamburg, Germany. We are currently involved in a few hotel projects. Also, some are in the city, some are outside. So we are coming from the consulting side and design side towards hotels.
My name is Fouad. I'm the CEO for Marah Tourism Oman. We are mainly developer in hospitality hotels and travel agency. And our aim to build few hotels in the next few years due to the need of the market. Thank you.
My name is Nader. I'm with Shaza Hotels. We have two brands, Shaza, which is our luxury brand, and Misk by Shaza, which is our upscale brand. We have 3 hotels in Oman. One is already operating on Al Mawj in Muscat. In a couple of months, we're also opening our luxury resort in Salalah. And we have a third project in Muscat under development.
Right. Hotels are a much more difficult object to build and open than other forms of real estate, such as office, retail, because often with those, you're doing shell and core and leaving it to the occupant to fit out. You often have advance payments of advance rent, whereas with a hotel, you don't have any customers when you open the door, and you have to decorate the rooms, fit out the kitchen, fill the refrigerator and everything else. So the costs of that are much higher. In addition, in my experience, the success rate from letter of intent to actual opening of doors with hotels is relatively low. I don't know, I've seen things 35%, 40%, and that's been my experience. Maybe to you, Andre and Fouad, why do we see so many hotels either not opening, late in opening, not coming to fruition? Who is to blame on that? And how could it be done better?
See is basically that hotels have a very unique constellation. When you have offices or you have residential projects, you have literally one client. Yeah? Now with hotels, it's a little bit different. You have an operator, and sometimes even the operator is split in two, that you have a brand, an operator, and then you have the investor of the asset. Now, every one of those parties, they have different objectives and they need to be aligned. And sometimes in the course of developing a property, those are not anymore as aligned as they were in the beginning or thought to be in the beginning. And that is quite often one of the reasons why development goes longer. Another thing which is also the case, we have heard that in the previous discussion, is that we are in a time that is changing and changing rapidly and massively. And as an investor, obviously one would like to keep up with those changes, and changing a development in the middle of it being built or planned obviously has then also some impact. I do believe that one should be flexible, but I also understand the necessity to be flexible enough to follow.
But that tells me that the feasibility hasn't been done as well as it should have, and perhaps the project management hasn't been there. or enough effort assigned to that?
One definitely can see it like that. There might be also a certain aspect in the truth of that. I wouldn't necessarily always say that is the case. There might be a different approach sometimes in different culture where you say, I decide something, I stick to it, and I pull it through. And other cultures maybe see themselves or have the nature to be more flexible and to be able to incorporate things depending how one looks at it. One comes to the one or the other conclusion. But certainly an aspect also right what you're saying, yes.
I've worked in emerging markets, and before coming to the Middle East, I was in Russia, CIS, and that was a very emerging market. And very often it was the owner would travel somewhere like a place and then say, well, if I build it, they will come. It doesn't happen. And they would often overbuild, wanting a Ritz-Carlton and out in some regional town because they liked it. Fouad, do you see, in your experience here, you've been a while, are hotel developers becoming sophisticated? Are they engaging the right people early on?
As you know, the hospitality and the hotel specifically, they are very specific projects. It's not like any residential or mall or retails. Normally, to build a hotel, you require a specific scope. A majority of developers, they fell into the trap that they rely on consultant more than an operator, whereby before starting any project, they have to select the operator in order to be sure that both parties are working as one. Why? Because there is a lot of specific area in the hotel business, specifically for back of the house, front of the house. It's not like any other area. So when they work together, for sure they will guarantee that there is no delay on achieving the project and finishing in the right time. However, sometimes it depends on changing of scope, changing of ideas, and changing a lot of issues. It might delay the project for a different reason. But if they work together, for sure they will reach a better solution and they do it in a different way. Same times, majority of developers, they concentrate on 5-star hotel or very high-end hotels. Again, during these days, we have to look on feasibility. How much I'm gonna invest? What's the return on investment? What is my profit? How can I achieve it? In Oman specifically, there is a big need for all niche or all type of these hotels because as we heard from the previous presentation, they are targeting 11 million tourism. Which means they are in need for different type of hotel rooms. And for the next 4 or 5 years as Marah, we are really planning to have different type of hotels everywhere because we believe in Oman as a destination and we believe that there is a big demand on the hospitality section. However, in order to achieve it, we have to be 100% sure that the scope, the time, the budget, and all these issues are properly forecasted in order to avoid any unexpected delay, I call it. Same times to start showing the result for the developer, for the operator, and for all other parties.
I can perhaps add on this. What we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years is in the region, many of the hotel owners are first-time hotel owners. It has come only recently in the last 10 or so years. Many investors are seeing the potential in tourism. And they say, as you were saying, Scott, I like this hotel, I want to build my own hotel. The problem with and the majority of owners are really first-time hotel owners. I'm talking in the GCC, not specifically only in Oman. The problem with this approach is that sometimes those owners fail to surround themselves with experts who can deliver those projects. And what happens basically is that if this owner is in trade, for instance, he will appoint his CEO of trade to look after the hospitality industry. And of course, we Arabs have a cultural sensitivity with saying, no, I don't know, maybe you should hire an expert. So we say, of course, I'll take on this responsibility and do it myself. And you end up in a company that is surrounded, where the investor is surrounded by people who are not really specialists in the field, who advise him on various different things that are not really for the benefit of the asset or really hospitality oriented. And you always end up with a lot of slow decision making, many delays in the projects, and this is why you keep seeing those 2-3 years delay. On the other hand, some of them believe that the operator will come and then will impose those high standards on them, and therefore it's going to increase cost. So owners start actually developing the hotels themselves with some engineering firm that they met once somewhere, and then you end up with a project that is missing kitchen, that has not enough elevators, and so many mistakes. And we're seeing this all the time. It's really painful. Despite what you try to, bring consultants next to them, support them, very few people surround themselves with experts. And we have a great case here with Marah for Tourism, who are building their first hotel. But, the owners brought a very seasoned hotelier to help them drive this project. And I wish more investors do that.
I have a brochure that I give potential clients, and my firm, we're very much owner-developer focused in legal counsel, and it's in negotiating with an international operator, and the first paragraph is, get experienced advisors. Don't skimp on that. If you save a month in building the hotel and opening the doors, you paid for your project manager. All of these things. Get a lawyer that has done hotels. Get an architect who's done hotels in the region. And Chris, it's always fun to have an operator because you guys are easy to pick on. You're involved in this. You have your technical services agreement, which you're setting out your brand standards, insisting on professional architects, designers, and the like. It's called a technical services agreement, but in reality, you're handing the developer a list of standards and then commenting, yes or no, you've met those standards. Why are you not, in your own interest, more involved in this process? And I go back to the success rate of opening doors in hotels. It seems to me that the operators, because building a hotel right, you can't do it a second time as easily. Getting it done right the first place is good for the owner, and it's very good for you.
You're not picking on me, actually. You're giving me the opportunity to shine in that respect, because our company really does things differently. And I totally agree with what you're saying. I've seen it when I was working on other projects under other brands, and most operators will say, here are our standards, come back to me when the drawings are ready. I'll say yes or no. You have to guess what is yes, what is no, and come back to me when you're ready. I take my time. I'm not too much in a hurry. It's your money at the end of the day, and when the hotel opens. We because our brand is so specific, we're completely immersed in the Arabian culture, and we're trying to find that balance between having an Arabian-looking hotel with a strong DNA, but also to be contemporary. Finding that balance is extremely difficult, because either you fall into a 1001 Nights interpretation, or you go into the IKEA route, which is something very modern that has no taste. So we do a lot more in terms of technical services. We have our own architects in-house. Our architect hold the hand of the other architect. Our technical team really works with all the specialists that are on the projects. They're driving actually the design. They're not waiting for the design to come to us. But you were saying something important. The key when you're doing those technical services is to get the right specialist. please don't hire an engineering company that tells you I can do architecture. Don't hire your niece because she did some art school and she can design the hotel. Don't get cheap lighting, soundproofing. I mean, you're spending $50, $100 million on a hotel, and you know, often we see it. We try to save small, meaningless costs on some of those specialists. You take interior designer, you want to build a hotel of the future, you want an interior designer that is really a visionary, that can really bring something different to the market. And that's very difficult to have, because today, you know, there's a lot of repetition in the designs. So if you want that hotel of the future, that visionary design, spend $200,000-$300,000 more to get someone decent. This is not where you should be saving on cost.
Something as well. So the interest, I would like to pick up on that. So usually when you look at the development, 10% are consultancy fees, 90% are construction cost. But because the consultancy comes first, it has quite a high impact also cost-wise on the 90% of the construction cost. If you take consulting and construction together, that's again only about 10% of your entire operating cost, not of the business itself, but of the
project.
Property, yes, of the lifespan of the property. Meaning the impact one can have at the very early stage with the consulting onto the construction, and then afterwards actually on the entire lifespan, is tremendous. And that might be actually, okay, I'm on the consulting side, but you have a huge leverage on every dollar you spend in the beginning of the project. Yeah. So.
What Chris is saying is absolutely right, because from the developer point of view, majority of operators, what they do, when you sign the technical and service agreement, they give you, this is our standard, this is our SOP, this is our design planning schedule, please comply and come back to us, which is absolutely wrong. The operator, once they sign the contract with the developer, and this is mainly for anybody who want to build a hotel, they have to be hand to hand and close to the developer. I don't want to say on a daily basis, but on a phases basis, from the conceptual design until the handover. Because by the end, they are the one who's going to operate the hotel. And if they will come when everything is finished, construction finished, nearly the furniture finished, or this is wrong, so it's the word wrong means demolition, time, cost, delay, and other issues. They have to be involved from day one. So again, it depends on the terms of agreement for the technical services. They have to be fully involved in the hotel during the construction period, not when the construction finish. Then you will guarantee that you will have a complete hotel, nearly with no mistakes, because there is nothing with 100% correct, but at least it will be workable for the operator, and you will avoid a lot of wastage of time, money, and other issues. What do you think, Chris?
Absolutely.
I mean, this isn't a sales pitch for several consultants up here. This is just plain time value of money and getting it right. I heard one fellow say once, it's like getting a nose job. If you don't get it right the first time, it's never right. And same with the hotel. If you don't build it right the first time, it's really very difficult to reconfigure. I think this is possibly to Chris, but also the panel. Are Middle East developers and operators getting better at tailoring their branded product to the local market? And I'm going to give an example. This was last year. I was working for an owner who was very unhappy with the performance of the hotel, and this operator was complaining about, well, we can't sell alcohol in Sharjah. And I looked at him and said, well, you knew that before you signed the contract, and you have to adapt. Chris, you are one of, you've actually established a brand that is a dry brand and have adapted those things. How do you feel compared, and I'd ask the others, Kempinski versus other groups, how are they adapting to the local market and preferences?
How are they doing it? I mean, most hotels today.
Let's talk about you, because your group.
By local market, you mean nationals of the GCC?
Yes, yes. I mean, there is certainly a demand here for the dry hotel and other elements that are distinct that you wouldn't do if you were building in Germany, in England, in Asia.
If you look at the growth of Muslim travelers for the next 5 to 10 years, the numbers are astonishing. And historically, brands coming to the region were saying, I'm going to build, you're building a hotel for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So it's really, you're looking at the future and what you can really bring to the table. And most hotels, by adapting to the local market, do it in terms of design, meaning decoration. You add 2, 3 mashrabiyas here and there, you put, a tea ceremony and whatever, and you say, I adapted. We saw that potential long time ago, and we created Shaza to be specifically tailored to the halal-conscious travelers. And we completely, studied the market to change how we approach the design, the area program of our hotels. How does the market travel? How many people travel on average? What do they need? What do you do with the space? Yes, you don't have alcohol, but it's not only about the dry aspect, it's about all the other amenities that come with it. The privacy side, the gender segregation, the circulation and flow into the hotel, the type of entertainment that you want to provide. Everything really has to be studied. And today we are the only brand in the world, internationally, who are doing 100% hotels that are catered to the halal-conscious travelers. And yes, other operators are doing dry hotels, but I don't call this adapting to the local market. They're doing it only because the owner is asking them to remove alcohol. So they will come to you and will say, okay, I'll give you the same concept as I do somewhere else, but I'll remove the wine list from my menu, and I'm dry. But they're not adapting to the market. The market needs space. The market needs privacy. The market has a different behavior. Booking behavior is different. So your guy in Sharjah, I understand why he was upset, because if you're bringing someone who doesn't know how to deal with such an environment, you would fail.
Well, he definitely did it. Andrea, how do you design a hotel that would be a dry hotel? So let's say you're doing a Hilton. And they come to you, and the owner, and says, "This is going to be a dry hotel. I've signed up with Hilton." How would you, and hopefully they've gotten to you that early on. How would you do it differently than building a hotel elsewhere?
So I think what has been mentioned before is very important. Usually, one of the things always about culturally specific, it's like the color, the material, the detailing. But that's actually not it. It's really about how people function, how they move, how they interact. And that has actually an effect then on the room specification, the room alignment, the sequence of rooms, how you interact with them, how much time you spend. And I think that would be an opportunity to actually see here what is specific and what is specific on the behavior. And once that is defined by the brand, then you would go over into the architecture and define the space. At the end, the decoration has also quite a lot to do with the taste, what is basically the brand, in which direction they want to go. It can be modern or it can be traditional, but it's the room sequences that keep the essence of a culture. Yeah. So I don't know whether that has really answered.
Right. Is with the dry hotels the F&B element in investment greater or less?
No, it needs the same attention.
And usage of guests.
What he, for example, also mentioned, larger groups are traveling, and you would like to have more niches, for example, where you can, with your extended family or large family, where you can sit down. You actually also spend a different amount of time together. You usually come, you eat, you move further. Whereas other cultures, they first have an apéro, then they go and eat, and then they go and dance. So the sequence, how you do things, are differently, and that would be reflected in the room offering you would have than in the hotel. Yeah. Or also this, that you have more privacy. How do you come about? I mean, is there an area where you could wait, for example, where one person of the family then goes and does the check-in, where the rest of the family can be more or less for themselves? So that how that you do accommodate that in a spatial meaning and architectural meaning as well.
Maybe coming back again to you, Andre, what are we seeing in the region insofar as using cost-effective, more sustainable building techniques, focuses on which obviously energy costs are premium here to address that? How has the market progressed in the last 10 years, and what do you see going forward?
So I think the last 5 years there was a tremendous change actually in that. When you look before, it was very short term. Now it becomes more long term, because the returns are not anymore as they used to be during the boom time. And I think sustainability is always a question of long term. You cannot think sustainable for 2 years or 3 years usually. It's really, you need to have that. Now, we believe there are some very, very small technical things you could do and you can do, like insulation, like for sound improvement, or insulation for thermal insulation. They are usually always cost related as well. Yeah, and those are the investment costs when you build the building. What we sense is that the investors are now more open to listen up what impact investments in the beginning have for their entire life cycle of the building. This is a process that is ongoing.
Any numbers you can throw out on that?
Not really, but we see that maybe about investments in sustainability has gone up by about 20-25%, as we see it in our clients, compared to about 7 years back. Yeah.
And what about existing properties? Is it easy to reconfigure those, or do you, especially some of the older properties, or would you have to really start over?
No, so there are two approaches. Like if the prime structure is good, then you can do renovations and actually enhance the entire building. That is quite often done. We see here also two ways. One is basically the interior design, which is basically on the reinvention of the brand and what the customer sees or the guest sees. And then there is the building itself. Usually on the building you look on terms of like 25, 30 years, where you would address the building and the renovation of the building, whereas in interior design it might be between 7 and 10 or 12 years. We haven't yet really reached those 25, 35 cycle where you could see on a larger scale what is happening with the structure.
And Fouad?
Let me add, let's see. Here, especially related to energy now, because the energy cost is going high and high every day. And the coming few years, I believe the energy is going to be a big issue. And working about the hotels, the energy or the consumption of utility, it goes straight down to the bottom line, which means you cannot do anything. And any saving you can do in the energy, also it will go straight to the bottom line. So as a developer or investors, they have to invest a little bit more on energy saving by providing systems whereby they can reduce their cost from energy, and there is too many. And the payback, it will be in no time, a year or 2 or maximum 3 years, whereby if I don't provide these systems, it means I have to continue spending from the operation income, these expenses. We are in a country whereby we have sun nearly 360 days. So working on solar energy system and any other systems, it will save a lot of energy. Yes, there is some investment cost, which is a little bit more, but the payback in no time, and we can save a lot. And this issue, it's going to be a real subject to be discussed in the coming few years, especially on what we are facing for energy. So I believe it's a very important point from the operator and from the developer investors to talk about energy, because unfortunately, majority of consultants and all other issues, they don't care about it. They're still using the traditional system, which is 10 or 20 years back, whereby we have a new system. Yes, it is a little bit more expensive. But if we compare the price, compare on the running cost for 10 years, you see it's much cheaper from other systems.
Well, I'm sure the paybacks is several years.
Indeed.
It's quite quick.
Indeed.
I would like to mention, it's really also the client and the investor needs to see the positive side. I mean, as a consultant, you usually offer more than one solution. And yes, you can show actually what benefit it gives, also financial, but it's really always the future, how you value as an investor, the future savings towards the immediate savings because you don't invest it. Yeah. So at the end, he who pays tells the piper what to play.
Yeah, but he should know in advance how much extra I'm gonna pay, and everyone is looking on his return on investment. So if I'll pay X amount and the payback it's gonna be in 1 or 2 or 3 years, whatever. And if I will not pay it, what the expenses will be within the next 10 years, then you see the balance between two, then I'm sure everyone will accept what we are talking about.
Yes and no. So it's like when you have a real estate, there are so many factors.
They want to save.
No. It's like you have in like with energy, you have a saving if you invest in the beginning. Then, well, with water, you have that as well. Then with the interior fit out, you can also do the same thing, higher
absolutely,
quality.
correct.
So at the end, you have, 200 opportunities where you can invest more now and save in the future. And there needs to be somebody who actually then prioritizes the different points. And if we nail it down to one point only, yes, absolutely agreed. But if you do that 100 points, maybe that's more than you can invest in the beginning, yeah? I mean, you are, as an investor, that's at least what we see, there is a certain budget you have, and within that budget, you need to reach the optimum, not for now, for the direct investment, yeah, you do now, as well as for the entire running period. And how you do that judgment is usually down to the client, yeah, or to the one who does the investment, and the advisors that are around. And I agree. Maybe if you look just at one, it makes sense. But if you have 100...
Fully agree. Whatever you select, absolutely. We cannot get the 100 points, yes. But there is priorities on the majority of issues whereby you can save more than the other issue. If the saving it's 1 or 2%, it's not worth to spend. But if I can save 20 or 25% from mainly electricity or water, whereas the majority of utility and all the expenses will go there, I believe the developer and the client, they have to agree because it's on their profit and it will come back to them by all means.
Well, Chris, you've got an interest in this because saving costs on the energy goes to your fees.
Because it affects our fees.
Are you building this into your brand standards?
The higher the utilities, the lower my fees.
Okay.
So, but obviously, I'm not the one investing in the hotel, so there is so much I can do to convince an owner to put more upfront money. However,
but is this in your stand? Are you putting these type of savings opportunities into your brand standards?
We have them in our standards. At some point we imposed investors to go LEED certified, etc. And back 5-10 years ago, people were laughing at us. It's like, come on, who cares about this? I wish just, you know, in our business, we see so many feasibility studies. And the feasibility study have been really consistent for the last 10, 15, 20 years in the way they approach development costs and return on investment. I wish that for the hotels of the future, consultants a little bit change their approach so that they price in those technologies in their feasibility study where there's a clear comparison between please invest a little bit more today, but look how much you're going to save in the future versus don't invest today, and this is how much running costs you're going to be charging. And with the hundreds and hundreds of feasibility studies I've seen, I'm not going to say never, but let's say you've rarely seen such an analysis. And I wish the experts in the room who are doing such a sustainable technologies and investment work with the consultants to educate, to teach, so that they come together as a one-fronted team to present to owners a case study that makes sense.
Let's talk about, this is a top of the hotel, designing the hotel of the future. Let's talk about design for dummies. I'll give you an example. I was in a hotel in Berlin, and in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m., the alarm, radio alarm next to the bed goes off, and I play around with it, and then it didn't work. So I unplug it, and it kept still making noise. I took it into the bathroom, wrapped it in a towel, and put it in a drawer. I could still hear it. I went to take it outside, and I thought, no, I can't leave it in the hallway. So then I opened up the window and put it on the windowsill, and it was still making noise. Went to bed. I didn't hear it. I woke up in the morning. It had snowed overnight, and it fell off onto the street. And I didn't say anything, and nobody noticed that the alarm clock was missing. But you're only staying in a hotel for 1, 2, 3 days. It's not like buying a console at your home where you're going to read the instructions. What about making design that's workable? You can be creative, but you have to be practical as well.
That's a question mainly to me, I assume.
Well, you're an architect. You are an inherent designer.
So usually what happens in hotels, you create actually an environment, an entire world. And that comes along with an idea of whatever you would like to generate. You can distill an idea to the essence and boil it down to that. But nevertheless, you need to have those elements to bring that idea out. I mean, if it's a business hotel, I mean, you don't want to have anything else than that it's functional, yeah. But if you, for example, you go to a resort that has a flavor of a certain part of the world, you actually need to evoke that, and you usually do that with icons that you give those associations. On the other hand, you have the operator who actually would like to have the entire design as efficient as possible to operate, to clean, to basically to fix things. And there again, it's really to keep a balance to satisfy both things, both sides of it. But there is not, I don't think there is a stereotype thing that you can say, oh, that's the hotel of the future. I think the future, everybody of us sees the future differently. And there might be the architect or the designer or the brand actually even who creates a vision of the future that others can adopt. I mean, we are working on 2 hotels that see the future completely differently. So one is closely aligned with the tech industry, and they see the future literally in linking everything. They read your mind before you're actually even there. And there is another property we're working on. They see exactly the opposite. They stripe everything off of the technology. They believe it's actually finding time for yourself again and finding time to communicate with people and bringing it down to a face-to-face space. So there are 2 opposite visions of the future. I think both have their right of existence.
Talking with people rather than your phone. How very novel.
Well,
you have really to know where you want to be in the future. If your brand or you as an investor want to go fully into artificial intelligence and basically cutting as much as possible human interaction, then that's one type of brand to one type of market. And maybe it is more suitable in the mid-scale lifestyle type of positioning. I think luxury will always and remain very reliant on human interaction. You can't replace luxury service by artificial intelligence. There are limits to what you can do and how you can respond to very demanding guests. So, you have now all those chatbots where basically you think you're talking to a human, but it's actually a computer answering you. In a hotel, you want to order room service, you want to ask housekeeping, everything can be done now via messaging with chatbots. And there are maybe 50 to 60% of what chatbots can actually do in terms of service. And when the request is too complex, then it has to go at the end of the day to a human. So we shouldn't go too crazy about, the entire hotel is going to become, artificially intelligent oriented and remove human interaction, because at the end of the day, we're in hospitality, and only a human, I believe, can provide the true hospitality.
Do we have any questions from the audience? There's a gentleman there. Can you get the microphone to him, please? Raise your hand again, please. There.
Well, I don't have any question, but I just want to add on the earlier point what we were discussing, that the delay in the hotel opening. Actually, there is another factor which is delaying, that is the government certifications. I mean that like a municipality, civil defense and all. What in our experience that we have observed that the hotel is ready to open, but we face these difficulties in getting the certification from the government side, like civil defense and municipality. In order to get more proactive, I think we should have, initially we should work on this and add to the plan, whereas we don't waste our time at the end, because when it reaches to at the end, at the final stage, what we face that the government official visits and they bring a lot of changes to the buildings. Maybe the construction has been completed, but there are more changes, more modifications are required, so it costs more and wastes more time. So I think if we add this in additionally in our initial plan, in technical support, when we are discussing that contract, I think it would help and ease the process there.
I mean, presumably those things are factored in your design and tech services. Additional questions? Yes?
Often we have to get the ball rolling, so I ask the first question, and then that results in a flurry of questions. So gentlemen, I'm very fascinated by your, when you touched upon the energy requirements. In fact, just a couple of days back, there was an interesting article in the Economist magazine about the same topic. So the article was on Africa, the continent. Africa's got equatorial climate, a long coastline, all the ingredients for plenty of renewable energy. But still, the continent largely depends on fossil-based coal fuel. And one of the reasons for that is because of the fluctuations in requirements. So often there's going to be a surge, and there'll be a lull, and then the renewable energy is unable to meet those fluctuating requirements. Do you think that large-scale hospitality projects have those same kind of surges, which is the reason why we're not seeing renewable energy being used more frequently?
So we looked into several projects that have photovoltaic included in the project. And one way to make that really feasible is if you can feed into the power grid that belongs to the government. That is usually a discussion that needs to be approved on a very high level. As soon as you are autark, basically, and you need to store the electricity, it becomes very, very, very hard to maintain it. Another issue we have on photovoltaic as well, it's not necessarily the fluctuability, but here you have a very saline air, very humid air, and you have a lot of sand in the air. That means you need to have actually mechanical removement of any sediments that go onto photovoltaic panel, so you cannot clean it automatically. So those are two key issues that we have faced, in particularly in solar energy. Solar panels for heating up the water is a different topic. There we actually surprised why it's not more used, and that's a topic that you mentioned. There is a little bit more investment in the beginning, but your gain is fantastic.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
It's not only the fluctuation of the price which we are interested on. Now, during these days, we have to take care about the entire environment, you know. And majority of design now, they are working on lead design, which is taking care of ecology, environment, and design element. So this is it's more important points because, yes, you are right, the price, it's go up and down and whatever. But during these days, it's gonna go up, 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 never down again. So there is too many criteria we have to take care when we design the systems, or we have to operate it, or we have to take care about the expenses, which we have to look for it, not only from the investment, from the operating cost and from the running cost, and what we can achieve within. No investor will work on short period. They have to consider it as a 10 years or 15 years. Thank you.
But in Africa, the sun is more reliable usually than the grid in many parts. So. We're about out of time. If I can, I think, summarize from the panel, going back to the first few questions, hotel is a very complex being to build right and get it right the first time. Much more difficult than other construction assets, and you can pay now or you can pay later, and it's better to get good consultants in all spheres up front and pay that advance money up front, which will be returned many times over going forward. So don't be stingy up front. I'd like to thank the panel, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you each with a memento for spending your time with us here today. And to hand over the memento to each of you gentlemen, I would like to request Mr. Musbah Mokbel, who is the Regional Marketing Manager of USG Boral. USG Boral is our silver partner for this event. So Mr. Musbah Mokbel, could you please come on the stage and hand over the memento to each one of our panelists? That's our moderator, Mr. Scott Antel. Chris Nader, who just landed. And Mr. Fouad Nohra. Maybe one collective photograph for the camera.